then all the traditions, they are reminders, right? So they were created as reminders to those original states that we can experience beyond concepts, as unconditional qualities in a way. And so we have that potential within ourselves, and yet we are also overridden by this conditioning that is manifesting itself as a illusion of solid separate self. Yeah, even at that time in 2001, there was already quite a bit of tourism coming and expecting more of a show rather than a deeper experience that really challenges the ego, right? So in the more old-time school shamans, they would not welcome people so much. And I've encountered a few of those where initially they would chase me out. They would really make sure that I'm not there just to pet my ego.
Yeah.
And so
Um,
nowadays, of course, it's different.
what's it? Yeah. But then you got lucky. I guess you found a guide, and he took you deep into the jungle. You had to eat like monkeys and stuff.
Well, that was my first experience of coming to the rainforest. I went for a 2 week survival trip into the rainforest. That was my first rite of passage initiation in a way. I was really searching for more genuine elders. And I had this guide from a Bora tribe that he took me for 2 weeks into the rainforest. We took no food, no water with us. And then him, just through his native wisdom and knowledge, he would find different types of food. We would eat snails, and one time we encountered a monkey that was about to be eaten by a jaguar, and then we had that. So basically, we had water from the vines, and that was part of looking for the indigenous elders deeper in the rainforest that uh, were more genuine in what they were doing.
And ultimately, you found them. You found the maestros.
Yeah, I had a few maestros. So my main teachers in the rainforest at that time was Jaguar elder, Witoto elder, and Ashwar chief elder. I had a mestizo teacher, and I also had a teacher. She was part Shipibo, the
Yeah.
medicine woman. So those were my five main elders that I studied with in the rainforest. And then, of course, I've also met with many different other indigenous elders and visited those communities. But the main traditions that I studied were, um, in a way, a mix of the indigenous, and I had one main mestizo teacher that helped me integrate a lot of the indigenous teachings.
Nice. So what was your background before you got into all this stuff? What were you doing in the world?
Well, my background, I came from Moldova, right, which was under a country under Soviet regime, and um, I started my spiritual path when I came to New York, actually, in '97, and so yeah, I had my condition, and because the condition was incurable, and the Western treatment methods were eventually not effective and started making me feel a lot worse. The pharmaceuticals I was taking, the only other alternative was to go through surgical procedures, removing portions of my large intestine for the rest of my life. And my gastroenterologist at that time, he was the first one to point me towards the spiritual path. So he told me that my condition is very psychosomatic and is caused by stress, worry, and all kinds of emotional disbalances, which I've had quite a few of those as a child. And so that pointed me to look for the psychosomatic source of my condition. I started studying Jung when I was about 17. And then I also studied some foundations of the traditional Chinese medicine, of Taoism, foundations of yoga that eventually brought me towards Tibetan Buddhism and Castaneda. Castaneda actually was one of the earlier influencing factors. So like the first consciousness bomb that I've had in my life. And so then I got involved in the psytrance community in New York. I was first starting off as a psychonaut, being kind of desperate in the world, both with my physical condition and also my first great love ended up marrying my best friend behind my back. And so that I was open enough. At first, I was quite against it, and I was very narrow tunneled, no nothing spiritual in my life until that point. I was really into sci-fi, um, but yeah, that was the first time that I became open enough. And even though I was criticizing, I had a friend who started bringing me a lot of literature first about psychedelics before I tried it, because I was very critical. So I read um, Albert Hoffman, LSD, My Problem Child, Alexander Shulgin books. And so then gradually I saw that there were more positive benefits to psychedelics than the negative effects. And then for about 2 years, I was going quite deep into the psychedelic self exploration and was also part of the Psytrance community in New York at that time. And at a
Time.
certain point, I hit a
That was a good
ceiling.
time by trance in New York.
Yeah, yeah, that was a great time. Yeah, it was. I had a lot of very profound experiences, a lot of people who were very intentional and doing different types of work in their lives. And at the same time, at a certain point, I hit the ceiling in my own process. I've had very profound awakening experiences, but didn't know how to integrate them into everyday life. And then also, I saw people who were in the psychedelic scene for decades, and I didn't like what I saw so much. I saw people becoming very eccentric and not so emotionally balanced, and yeah, of course, people also. Um, being harmed in the psychedelic scene because of no conscious guidance or way to work with these powerful substances. And so then life naturally guided me to the Amazon rainforest. I started meeting a lot of people who were mentioning at that time ayahuasca was not so known. It was only known more in esoteric circles, people who were practicing a spiritual path long enough, and so I started meeting people who were directing me to the rainforest. And then in 2001, I decided to go there for the first time. And soon enough after that, I moved to the rainforest and stayed there for a prolonged period of time. Initially, for 3 years, I went through a more formal Amazonian apprenticeship that allowed me to begin actually the path of studying these traditions. So,
So
and that's
obviously
a big part of it, right?
that was like a huge life change. I mean, the experience must have been incredible for you to be like, oh, I'm going to give up on New York or whatever and move out to the Amazon.
Well, I think similarly to you, I was becoming quite disenchanted with Western society and the value system that it was upholding.
Yeah. And so what did you find? I mean, I know, over the years now, it's been a few decades, you've built a whole center and you're working with local tribes. I think you said you're working on a school project there. So what was your development process through this whole thing?
Well, 8 months into me living in the rainforest, I experienced total remission of the health condition that I had until that time. I've been in total remission until now, so I haven't had any symptoms. I can't legally say that I got cured because there is no cure for it in allopathic medicine, but I can say that I've been in total remission. Um, so I've undergone a very profound process. Of course, the physical illness that I had was just the tip of the iceberg, and it allowed me to start healing on much, much more deeper levels and work with intergenerational trauma, and also reflect on the collective trauma of our society and the many causes that are creating all of the symptoms that we are experiencing in our world today. And so then once I experienced that in my own being, then I could see nothing more inspiring than to learn these traditions and to share them effectively and meaningfully with people who are open to this kind of healing that affects all aspects of our lives.
Yeah. Um, and when did you also? I mean, we've never worked together, but I've also heard that a lot of my friends who worked with you, it's quite a big community of people you worked with. They also talk about how you integrate Buddhism, kind of like yeah. How did that? I mean, when did you start getting involved with Buddhist ideas and practices and so on?
Mhm. So Buddhist ideas and practices, I started off in 99, and I was brought into Tibetan Buddhism by a very dear friend who was a practitioner for a very long time. He started off, I think, in the 70s. He was one of the earlier students of Lama Oli Nidal from the Diamond Way Center. And so again, for the first 2 years, I was just getting to know him, and he introduced a lot of the foundations. And I saw, based on the student, you can see how the teacher is. And so that helped me to connect with the different teachers. Lama Ole was my first root Lama, and then my main root Lama is also from the Karma Kagyu lineage, Paljor Rimli Khenchen Rinpoche. And they always encouraged me to do this work. So the advice that I have received is that Buddhism is very flexible. You bring it into any culture and tradition, and it will bring out the best of those cultures and traditions. And so that helped me to navigate very obscure, often mystery initiation schools in the Amazonian traditions, and really be able to navigate them based on the consciousness transmission beyond concepts, beyond duality that I have experienced with my Tibetan root teachers. And so that um, was definitely very beneficial for me learning from the Amazonian traditions that can often tend to be very overly mystified and operate from a different frame of consciousness than our modern cognitive state operates on.
Yeah. It seems like a lot of the book is about the relationship between you and one of these elders. Is that correct?
Well, I mentioned that in the beginning of the book, how this elder is the only mythical personage or
Ah,
fictional personage. In the book, he's a combination of all the best qualities of all of the teachers that I've encountered in the Amazonian rainforest over the years. So, for the sake of making the information more direct and relevant, then I've created this personage that embodies all the best qualities, also to avoid the holy cow worshipping symptom that tends to happen when people go to the Amazon or Tibet and think
yeah.
that just because someone is Amazonian or Tibetan, that makes them enlightened or perfect in every way.
But it seems like what you are suggesting in the book is that it's really meant to be a very like path. It's very much about like opening your heart, being very present, very authentic. Um,
Yeah, my intention was to be vulnerable and inspire the vulnerability in the readers and allow people to reflect on their own life process. And of course, within these traditions, what I have witnessed is that the path delineated of human civilization or how human culture is going through different thresholds is mirrored in each of our individual lives. So we all experience this distancing from the original innocence of our lives that has so much wisdom to it. And yet, in our society, we are taught to mistrust that very same innocence and to hide it from the world. And so the book describes these ancient legends that talk about the journey of remembrance and also the original pandemic of forgetfulness, the spiritual amnesia that took over the world, where people's consciousness became disconnected from their hearts.
yeah, I was surprised, and I didn't read all the book, just read some. But you're talking about how there's a belief that there was like an Amazonian harmonic golden age of like peace and so on. I
Yeah.
mean, do you really literally believe that to be the case, or is it more of a myth or symbol or fable in a way?
From everything that I have seen in all of these traditions, I do see that they come from a very advanced state of consciousness that human civilization once embodied.
Yeah, yeah, but even so, I mean, those they tend to still be cultures where there's a bit of intertribal violence and so on.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, of course. I mean, these cultures were also affected by this sickness of forgetfulness that has taken over humanity on the level of the collective unconscious. And they have been more isolated from the world and they've been able to maintain more of that tradition. However, the basically the premise that my teachers have shared with me, how all of these traditions, they were coming from a later time when the sickness of forgetfulness was already overtaking the human society. So the original times they describe as having no traditions, no religions, people abiding naturally in that original state of consciousness. And there was love ruling all over the world. People were able to share their highest potential humbly with each other. And because of that, everyone were able to manifest their highest potential. And so then through that, many different extrasensory perceptions, all kinds of superpowers, psychic powers that people were able to manifest came about. And then gradually humanity started to forget where it all came from and obsess themselves with all of the things that they were able to experience in the world. And so there was a gradual kind of a process of forgetting that original fusion of consciousness and compassion inseparable.
Yeah.
And so then all of the traditions they are reminders, right? So they were created as reminders to those original states that we can experience beyond concepts as unconditional qualities in a way. And so we have that potential within ourselves, and yet we are also overridden by this conditioning that is manifesting itself as a illusion of solid separate self.
What do you think of the ongoing kind of dissemination of ayahuasca in the in the world, particularly in the modern world?
Well, as I started mentioning to you, when I was connecting with ayahuasca, it was only known in the more esoteric circles, and so from my experience, people were approaching ayahuasca also with a different intention than how many people approach it today, where it's becoming more of a household name, and then people may not have so much of a spiritual background, and then that can of course lead to more confusion and dilution of the original essence. So also the kind of consumerist mindset that is turning ayahuasca into sideshow attraction and is basically adapting it into the conditioned mentality of self-absorption. So
Yeah,
that's one of the concerns that I have.
yeah, yeah. I guess I was very enthusiastic when I wrote my first book, Breaking Open the Head, on you know that the sort of next wave of psychedelics or entheogens would have a powerful positive impact. And now, more than 20 years later, I'm not convinced that it's really working out like that. But I sense that you have a more of a sense that there is kind of an evolution of consciousness going on in some positive sense. Do you see that, or what's your perspective on that?
I do see that there are different currents that are happening in different dimensions of our current society. And that's also the name of my book, Beyond Ayahuasca, that ayahuasca was integral to these ancient indigenous traditions, yet it was not the central element. There's the storytelling is medicine in these traditions in and of itself. And the children are introduced to the myth creations, to the different legends, to the um, life creation stories from early age, and then they are in a way directed through this archetypal language to embark on the evolutionary journey of their lives, which is something that is missing in our today's society. And then, of course, the rites of passage, and then the connection with the environment, the principles of reciprocity, the flora, the fauna, the culture itself is such a big aspect of that. And so I see that in today's world where we have an identity crisis in our society. And so then it's very important to keep preserving the cultural diversity of the world, the original people that are still able to maintain that way of life, even intuitively, and remind us of what is possible today, and especially with our children who are socially isolated and growing up in front of the screen. And so to have those rites of passage, to have this possibilities of children of the world and the elders of the world to keep reuniting and meeting together, I think today we live in unprecedented times for that. And and for me, it's always been essential to go to the root of any health condition, and that includes the health condition of our society today. So to see how what we're seeing today in terms of political leaders and also the different um, issues in the world, in many countries in the world today, those are just the side effects of a sick society, and that starts with our youth. And so then that has been something that I've been working on with the Jaguar tribe elders. Also 100% of the proceeds from Beyond Ayahuasca book I dedicated to the development of an ancestral school for the Jaguar tribe children, because the tribes themselves, they also go through a cultural extinction nowadays, and they only see Turi. This tribe particularly, they have been slaves to Colombian robber barons just 50 years ago, and they escaped with their lives to Peru. They've been allocated very small reservation, not enough to sustain themselves, and then they've been surviving off of tourism. And
Yeah.
so then, and they have been really surviving during COVID. We've been supporting them because they've been basically dying from hunger, no tourists, no food. And then of course they only do it, tourists just expect them to do this show, and then they swarm them with trinkets, and then they themselves stop honoring their own culture. And so then it's also up to us from the Western world to not just be consumerist tourists, and that includes all the people that go towards the ayahuasca ceremony, but to see if there is sacred reciprocity or irony that is happening, that is actually empowering the indigenous people, and also allowing us to integrate it. It's also not about the holy cow worshipping syndrome, but really finding that meeting between the state of consciousness that the indigenous people embody, the more mystical, and also our more logical mind of today's world, right? I don't believe that it's about also reverting, but the evolution of humanity is about finding the middle point.
So, along with having your center, how have you gone about trying to help restore these kind of vanishing local cultures in the indigenous world?
Well, over the years, our institute has done many different initiatives. We've done work with permaculture and also collaborating with the local farmers and learning from them as well and sharing. Our approach has always been about living side by side with them. It's not about we're going to come and tell you what to do and we're going to help you, but we're going to live side by side and learn from each other. And then through this mutual existence, we're going to empower and support each other and learn from each other, because the indigenous people, they struggle to integrate themselves into the modern world that they inevitably find themselves to be a part of. And so we've done initiatives like permaculture, also intercultural healing programs where we go to the different rural native communities, and we bring their own native healers that they're already losing touch with, and also natural medicine practitioners from around the world. And we set up free communal clinics. And those people, they're not supported by the Ministry of Health, for example, so they don't receive the treatment, and at the same time they're already disconnected from their original heritage. So then we encourage them to actually start trusting more the natural medicine modalities that are part of their tradition, and also see different ways that they can support themselves throughout the years. Then also we've done, of course, our institute also is preserving a buffer zone area in the size of 1,500 hectares in the buffer zone of the Manung National Park, and we're also there in a way as a beacon preventing illegal miners and logging companies right behind our land. Some of the last uncontacted tribes in the world still live just a day's walk, so we are kind of on the frontier of known civilization to humanity, and we've been preserving that land since 2014. So that's also quite a big initiative, collaborating with local communities, also working with finding ways for them to find support so that they don't have to sell out to mining companies and logging companies, and then they can create organic produce and helping them find an international market for that organic certification. Then also the ancestral schools that I've mentioned for Jaguar tribe, we're intending to replicate that. We've also installed water purification systems over the years. So many different ways that allow us to actually be part of the life of the indigenous people. And then, of course, they open up their wisdom and knowledge a lot more when it's not just a consumerist tourism experience that they're witnessing.
I saw on the front of the book, there's like a letter that says you were given official kind of like, you were brought into one of the indigenous cultures on some kind of like official level. Um,
Yeah, that was in 2004. I was adopted by the Jaguar tribe, and then they were doing this, what do you call it, population census in 2011, I think. Um, you know, I think something like that. So then they made an official notarized document that is basically encouraging me and giving me the permission to share their wisdom and culture with the world, because they have been with me for living with me for quite a long time, and they trust me to share their culture with the world.
where do people go, by the way, if they want to find out more about what you're up to and the book and all that stuff?
Well, our website is paititi-institute.org, and people can find us also on social media, on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. So yeah, people can look for the book Beyond Ayahuasca. It's in all major stores. It's been published by Hay House, and it has been received really well by our world community. So yeah, people can find it on Amazon. Just search Beyond Ayahuasca book, and it will come up.
Yeah. Um, cool. I was gonna shift the subject a little bit and ask you, what's kind of like the most magical, mind-bending kind of experience that you've personally ever had as a result of doing this shamanic work?
Well, besides just the physiological healing that I've experienced, the most mind bending experience that I've had was to awaken to my own innocence, to remember what it means to be alive for the first time in my life, and to feel this interconnected intelligence of the world that we are existing in, and to connect a lot of the dots through all of these situations, see how nothing is random that has ever occurred. Even the most toughest situations or enemies in my life has always been encouraging me to awaken to my true nature, to who I am beyond the personality and the masks, to discover those qualities of the heart that allow me to be with all of the pains and aches and problems and the suffering that I see in the world today.
Nice. Um, and what is a patiti actually? You talk about it in the book, and it's a concept from one of these cultures.
Mhm. Yeah, Paititi is a pre-Incan name. It comes from the Tiwanaku culture, which is one of the more ancient original cultures, where the megaliths in the Lake Titicaca. are located. And the name Paititi is a parallel legend to El Dorado. And then, of course, many people have been mistaken it for a physical place, and some legends say that they're right behind our land. We didn't know about that when we got the land, and we already had the name. But the original Tiwanaku culture meaning is the heart of all the hearts.
Right, but wasn't it also referring to some, like, ancient time period or something, or some golden you said
Yeah,
golden age?
it was kind of like a portal into the realm of enlightened ancestors that have abided in the heart of all the hearts, and so kind of the original star people.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so that is the direct reference to that.
So nothing else? Nothing, like, in terms of your own experiences, anything, like, extremely, like, surprising or, like, telepathy or telekinesis or
Yeah, of
anything,
course, I have had those experiences, and I've had ayahuasca. There has been studies in Brazil, I think, quite a few neuroscientific studies, and they labeled this um, one of the neurotransmitters that is produced during ayahuasca. I think they named it telepathy. And so it's a common phenomenon. uh, People in ceremonies, they start to have similar experiences or may relate to certain experiences and energies, even certain icaros, right? The ancient healing melodies that people sometimes intuit at the same time that are about to come into the ceremony space. So yeah, of course, I've experienced telepathy, and this is where my Tibetan teachers have been very helpful. They told me that yeah, there are many different siddhis, right, magical powers that you can experience, but there is only one extraordinary magical power, and that is the power of compassion.
hmm,
That is the only power that can liberate us from the cycle of suffering.
cool. Well, I'm a little bit out of questions for you, Roman. I don't know if you have any. Anybody who's listening might have a question, or if you have a
Yeah,
question.
yeah, it would be great. Of course. Yeah, well, I just wanted to ask you a question also. How do you perceive? Because I see that, of course, to go to the root of what is the world is happening today. Now you're quite active in your life, and you are trying to bring change into the world. And so, how do you see coming into the root of what the world is experiencing today looks like?
Hmm. Um, I guess I mean there's all different words you could use for a disconnection. But I'm very concerned about, we already seem to have, like, a big mountain to climb, 20 years ago, and I'm now concerned about the effects of this technology on younger people's brains and minds, and whether that's really going to create kind of like, yeah, kind of very like irreparable damage damage that's extremely hard to fix. Like, if kids are growing up, with using the Google Maps, even for instance, or the Apple Maps, they don't really use their hippocampus, so they don't really develop spatial navigation and spatial memory,
Mm,
and so they're very disoriented in a sense and quite lost, and also that affects their memory in general. So I think that we plunged very quickly further into this realm of what everybody calls cognitive capitalism, and yeah, I'm very worried about that. I mean, that it's just making people more disconnected and detached, and kind of feeling like everything is a sort of, you know a little bit doom oriented, but also a bit of like a video game or simulation or something. Um, we're getting some nice questions in the chat.
mhm.
Um, When Lucas asked, "What about love instead of compassion as the central pillar?"
Yeah, I think they're very interrelated, of course. So, love, I think that without having the love in one's own life and opening the heart to one's own misery and suffering and struggle, it's hard, if not impossible, to open the heart to others. So, I think they're very connected in that way.
And we had another question. You mentioned Castaneda. Which books have you read, and how has Castaneda, I think, impacted your experience in Peru and in writing your book?
Well, Castaneda was an inspiration to me. I've read all of Castaneda books a few times over the years, and every time I saw a deeper layer of meaning. And they have been very instructive of my own path. I mentioned was my first consciousness bump, and yeah, that very much impacted. So my book is written in a type of a Castaneda style. There is a lot of dialogue with the elder that is in the book, and so yeah, that was very inspiring for me in a way where there is a meeting of the minds that is happening between the cultures, and so Castaneda has been very inspiring to me in that way. And I know that Daniel's book, first book, Breaking Open the Head, was also kind of like you have some of the Castaneda style in there.
A little bit. But Castaneda also, I don't know, is often considered to have been kind of a making it up, a lot of it. I don't know what you think, but there's a lot of kind of negative criticism that suggests
Yeah,
that.
yeah. You know, from my research, Castaneda was also a student of Jung,
Yeah,
and so a lot of people, they, from my experience, they tend to take Castaneda quite literally. And for me, Castaneda was very supportive because I saw the metaphorical language and the archetypal language that, in my experience, proved to be very beneficial. And I found a lot of the, especially the inner work that Castaneda describes, was very effective in my life and turned out
yeah.
to be very true. And then, of course, yeah, there's a lot of things there that are more, I found not kind of this very pragmatic, logical mind sphere related. And yet, yeah, I do find that there's a lot of profound meaning in the dream language, right? The
Yeah.
symbolic meaning of what he is alluding to, and then of course it's up to each one of us to uh, to be self-reflective.
I guess the books, yeah, they have a kind of strange quality of like because I mean, I think he has people smoking the mushrooms at one point. Like nobody does that. He has all these kind of weird things which don't feel very realistic. But yeah, there's something about the atmosphere or there is some kind of like something that gives it a weight to it. Like it's a very memorable world that he kind of
What I
discovers.
found also interesting in Castaneda's work is from the first book to his later ones, you can witness his own transformation because he's been writing it over the different years, and you can find it in his style of writing, how he has been unfolding and evolving. And I've also really appreciated that. And that has also been process of just writing my book. I've never written my book to be published, even it was just my own um, inspiration to connect the dots and to tune in into the essence of these traditions. And I witnessed that this has been also very helpful to me to see how the one who is uh, describing the experience, also the inner world changes, and then that is reflected in the writing.
Lucas asks, "What is the highest thing you hope your book will give to the world?"
Well, my highest hope, my vision from this book, this is just the first book in the series. And the book is dedicated both to the children of the world to be able to experience this initiations and the awakenings and the deeper trust in their own innocence. And of course, to empower the indigenous people and their future generations. The next books in the series, they're also dedicated to the various tribes in the rainforest, and the proceeds are also going to go to the development of the ancestral schools where the elders can continue sharing them. And I also have a children's book that I've developed alongside the elders. I have it here, and this book is part of the eco-socio-emotional intelligence workshop that our institute does with parents and children. Even right now, as I'm traveling through the US, I've just done an amazing one yesterday. And so my hope for the world is that This will be a contribution to the cultural diversity, to us remembering our nature in despite everything that is happening in the world today, and then we can have future guardians of the world that take care of the ecosystem of the humanity, that maintain the essential profound human values that are also being diluted today. So those are some of my hope
Nice
for
one.
this.
Lucas also asks, he's got a lot of questions for you. Do you have advice for someone starting out with ayahuasca who has done intense inner shadow work and energetic practices? So not a total novice, somebody who has some work under their belt.
Well, I would encourage not to do it just as a random one-time recreational experience, but to really connect with the people who facilitate what their belief systems are, to allow some time to get to know them, to see how they are and what they're doing in the world. And also, for me, it's always been important to do ayahuasca in a retreat container where we have an intentional circle of people who are there dedicated for a specific amount of time. So our institute, we do minimum 10-day retreats in the Amazon rainforest, but just random experiences, I find that that can be very hard to integrate. And also there is a lack of the intentional container and the community that support each other through that.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I'm curious to see. I know you have a gathering coming up in November, is that right, or December?
In December, yeah, it's a
Yeah,
new
yeah.
year.
I
New Year.
might see if I make it. I haven't really done much medicine in a long time.
Mhm.
It would be good to get back to it. Um, yeah, in fact, the last time I did it was really like quite a while ago. It might have been like 7 or 8 years, really. And the medicine was kind of like I got a little sense at the end. It was like that. It was like sort of I'd finished some part of my process with it, and it just felt like sort of like go away. So I hope it wants me back.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I find that the medicine also is a skillful mean, right? So the indigenous people utilize it as an instrument, and of course, we can learn to utilize it more skillfully. Otherwise, yeah, we can hammer nails with a microscope, and it's not going to be so effective. So,
yeah. Cool. Anything else you want to discuss or add?
um, well, I'm right now on tour. I'm gonna have a book talk here in Portland. I think it's gonna happen the day after tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, people can tune in into our events and then also see different initiatives that are unfolding. Also, I'm very inspired to develop a network of people who are dedicated to this kind of more integral future of humanity and are doing different initiatives with rites of initiation. Right now, we are working also with friends from that do similar projects in the Himalayas, in Africa, and also taking inner city youth to nature adventures around the world to visit native communities as part of future leadership courses and rites of passage initiation for youth. So I'm very inspired to keep creating collaborations and ways that we can empower all of those initiatives, both in Peru, in the Andes, in the Amazon, in Mexico. I just came from a tour in Mexico and was connecting to amazing initiatives there as well. And also here in the US, I see that people do different initiations both with nature, with sports, with indigenous elders for youth, and I see that this is where it's all at, is how can we support the future generations similarly to what you shared, Daniel.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Roman. Great to catch up. Look forward to
Yeah.
seeing you soon, either in New York or the Amazon, or who knows where else.
Yeah, always great to see you. Much love. Take care.
Have a great day,
And thank you,
everybody.
everyone.
Bye.
Okay.